Have you ever just looked around at everything? I mean, really looked? And wondered if there's some kind of grand design behind it all? Well, today, we're going to dive into a philosophical text that tackles that exact question. But it doesn't do it with a bunch of dense arguments. Instead, it tells a story, a really captivating one. It's called The 22nd Word, and it's a parable that, honestly, might just change how you see the world.
So the story just drops us right in. We've got two men, and they wake up, almost like from a dream, and they're in this place that is absolutely stunning, but also totally confusing. Just try to imagine that mix of pure awe and just, where in the world are we? With zero memory of how they even got there.
And you can just feel their confusion. They're trying to make sense of what they're seeing, but it doesn't fit into any neat little box. Is this a whole country? Or maybe a perfectly planned city? Or is it something even bigger, like one single incredible palace? The scale is just mind-boggling, but one thing is becoming super clear. There's a perfect order to everything. So, what do you do in a situation like that? Naturally, your first instinct is to get up and start exploring. And this first part of the story is all about that journey, what they see, what they notice as they wander through this strange, mysterious, and beautifully crafted world. And as they walk around, the evidence that there's some kind of guiding hand behind it all just becomes impossible to miss. Look at the details here. You have creatures, and they aren't just wandering around randomly. They're all busy, carrying out these specific, important jobs. The land itself looks like it's been decorated on purpose. This is a world that is just humming with purpose, not random chaos. So, for one of the men, the light bulb goes on almost immediately. He thinks, a place this complex, this perfectly organized, it couldn't just happen. There has to be a ruler, an architect. And not only that, he feels this sense of duty, this need to try and understand the one who brought them here in the first place. Okay, and this is where the story gets really juicy, because they're both standing there looking at the exact same incredible world, but our two friends are about to go down two completely different paths of thinking. This is really the core conflict of the whole parable. And this slide just lays it all out, the huge gap between their worldviews. On the left, you've got the friend who sees purpose and intention in every little detail, and it all points to one single creator. But his friend on the right? Totally different story. He's choosing what seems easier, saying it's all just random chance because, and this is a key line, his ease lies in not thinking of him. It's that classic debate, design versus chaos. So the skeptic basically throws down the gauntlet. He wants more than just, hey, look around, isn't it amazing? He wants proof. He wants a solid, decisive argument that he can't poke holes in. And this challenge is really what kicks off the rest of the story. All right, challenge accepted. The intelligent friend agrees, but he's not going to try and prove his point by, pointing up at the sky. Instead, he says he's going to show his friend the maker's signature, his seal, which he claims is hidden right in plain sight, on every single thing around them. And he starts with this really weird question. It's obviously a metaphor, and it's designed to get his friend to look closer at the small miracles they've probably been walking right past.
You see, the ounce of cotton is a metaphor for a seed. This tiny, simple little thing that holds the blueprint for so much complexity and beauty. From this one tiny starting point, you get this explosion of intricate design. The parable is arguing that this kind of transformation, it's not just a boring natural process. It's a signature. It's a sign from the Creator. The text actually has a name for this idea, the divine seal. It's the concept that every single thing, no matter how big or small, has this unmistakable mark from its maker. Think of it like an artist's signature on a painting. It proves where it came from and points to a power way bigger than itself. And this quote just sums up the whole argument perfectly. Every single created thing is basically a living, breathing testament. It's as if every plant, every animal is shouting, hey, the one who made me is so powerful that creating this entire universe is just as easy for him as it was to create little old me. So the evidence for a creator is starting to pile up. But remember the challenge? The skeptic wanted proof of a single creator. So now we get into the argument for unity and why the parable says all these divine seals have to point back to one single unified source. The logic here is actually pretty straightforward. It's an argument from simplicity. If you say everything comes from one source, then the ease, the abundance, and the perfect order they're seeing, it all makes sense. But the second you try to say it comes from many different competing sources, well, you'd expect to see difficulty, scarcity, and a whole lot of chaos. The text uses this super simple but really powerful analogy to nail the point home. I mean, think about it. If even a small town gets chaotic when you have two leaders who can't agree, how could this vast, complex universe stay in perfect order if there were multiple rulers? The parable argues that the very existence of order is proof of a single guiding hand. So, what's the magic number? According to the parable, it's one, a single unified source of all creation. That's presented as the only way to explain the flawless harmony they're witnessing. Any other number would, sooner or later, lead to the chaos that is so clearly missing from this place. And here's one last analogy to make it totally clear. Imagine equipping an entire army. If everything, the uniforms, the weapons, the gear, all comes from one central factory, it's pretty simple, right? Now imagine trying to equip every single soldier from a different factory. It would be a logistical nightmare. Unity makes things easy. Having a bunch of different sources creates impossible complexity. So after laying out all this evidence, the maker's signature on everything, and the logical argument that order requires unity, the story finally reaches its climax. A verdict has to be reached. And in this final moment, the evidence is just too much to deny. The skeptic, well, he's not a skeptic anymore. His doubt just melts away and is replaced by belief. He finally sees the world not as a random accident, but as the masterpiece of one single, perfect creator. It's a huge transformation, a journey from pure disbelief to total awe. So the big takeaway here from the 22nd word is that it presents belief not as some kind of blind leap of faith, but as the most rational conclusion you can come to. The whole argument is built on two main pillars. First, that divine seal, the evidence of design and everything. And second, the argument for unity, the idea that the order we see all around us logically points to a single source. And so the parable kind of turns the question back to us, to think about in our own lives. When you look at our world, from the massive scale of the cosmos down to the tiniest living cell, what do you see? Do you see patterns that suggest order, or just the random chaos of chance? It's a huge question, for sure, but it's a fascinating one to explore. Thanks so much for joining me on this little philosophical journey.